TYcoon left his wife for years, saw her cleaning at a luxury party. He thought she was the Sujin, with her sleeves rolled up and flour dusting her cheek, stirred a bowl of batter. Her eyes sparkled as she glanced across the table at Daniel, who sat there, his tie crooked, hair slightly messy, and mouth full of pancakes. "You're going to be late," she giggled, wiping her hands on her apron and walking over to straighten his collar. Daniel looked up at her with boyish charm, chewing fast before speaking. "Late for what these pancakes are worth every second. Besides, I'd rather be here with you." "You say that now," she teased, narrowing her eyes. "But one day, you'll be too busy building empires to sit here and eat my burnt pancakes." He stood up, wrapping his arms around her waist. "If I ever get that busy, pull me back." "Okay." Sujin smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Promise me you won't change." "I promise," he whispered. At that moment, they weren't thinking about money, success, or the outside world. They had dreams, yes. Daniel dreamt of becoming a business tycoon, of rising above his family's struggles, of proving himself. Sujin's dreams were quieter, a home filled with warmth, a child's laughter echoing in the halls, growing old with the man she loved. But dreams often change. Daniel had always been ambitious. Ever since he was a boy selling gumsticks outside his school gates to help his single mother, he'd wanted more. Not for vanity, but for survival. He knew hunger. He knew the sting of classmates whispering about his torn shoes. And now, with a finance degree nearly in hand and his foot in the door at a promising startup, the world was finally opening up to him. But success came with a cost. As Daniel worked longer hours, Sujin began eating dinner alone more often. She never complained. Instead, she packed him extra meals, left notes in his briefcase, and reminded him to rest. One night, he came home late, far past midnight. The apartment was dark except for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. Sujin had fallen asleep on the couch, a book open on her chest, dinner untouched on the table. Daniel stood there for a moment, watching her. He loved her, but there was a strange knot forming in his chest. Something unspoken, a feeling that he couldn't name, a discontentment that whispered cruel things to him in the silence. He didn't wake her. He walked to the window and looked out at the city skyline, at the towers of glass and steel lit up like stars. Somewhere in those buildings were the men he wanted to be. Somewhere in that world, his name meant nothing. Time moved like a quiet thief. 6 months passed. Daniel was now an executive assistant to the CEO of a powerful conglomerate. The money started flowing. New clothes, new apartment, new connections. He took Sujin to business events at first, but she didn't quite fit in. Her clothes weren't designer. Her laugh was too loud. She wasn't like the women the other executives dated. Women with long manicured fingers and cold ambition in their eyes. Still, Sujin tried. She smiled. She cooked. She waited. But she noticed the change. In his eyes. In his words. In the way he stopped calling her my love and started calling her Sue. One evening, Daniel came home early. Sujin was folding laundry on their bed, humming softly. "You're home early," she said, delighted. "Should I start dinner?" "No," he said, not meeting her eyes. "We need to talk." Her heart sank. He sat down, running a hand through his hair. "I got promoted. Regional director." Her eyes lit up. "Daniel, that's amazing. I'm moving to Singapore next month." The air thickened. Sujin stared at him, confused. "We can go together, right? I'll start packing." He looked at her then, really looked, and something inside him faltered. But he steeled himself. "No, I think it's better if we go our separate ways." She didn't understand. "What are you saying? You deserve more than this. You deserve someone who'll be home for dinner, who won't forget anniversaries." "I've changed, Sujin. And you," he hesitated. "You don't belong in the world I'm heading into." The silence was deafening. "You said I could pull you back," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. He stood, as if running from her pain. "I don't want to be pulled back." That night, Sujin packed her things. Not because he asked her to leave, but because staying meant watching the man she loved become a stranger. She moved in with an old friend. Days turned into weeks. Her heart tried to heal, but it wouldn't stop bleeding. And then, just as she began rebuilding, she found out she was pregnant. She sat alone on the clinic bench, the test trembling in her hand. Rain tapped on the window like a sad lullaby. "I'm going to be a mother," she whispered. Her hands covered her mouth as she cried. Not from fear, but from overwhelming love and heartbreak. She would not chase Daniel. She would not beg him to return. She would raise this child with the same strength and grace that once made him fall in love with her. Years would pass. Daniel would soar through the skies of success. His name would be printed in magazines. Women would chase him, partners would fear him, and yet, in the quiet moments when no one was watching, he would remember the smell of pancakes, the sound of her laugh, the woman who once looked at him like he was the entire world. And one day, fate would bring them back together. But neither of them would be the same. Not after all they had lost. She worked long hours at a local flower shop, wrapping roses for lovers and brides, her hands moving even as her heart felt numb. Customers often complimented her gentleness, never knowing that behind her soft smile was a woman trying not to collapse. At night, she'd press her hands to her belly and whisper, "You are not alone. I'll protect you. I promise." And so she endured. Months later, she gave birth to a boy with soft black hair and eyes that mirrored Daniel's. Eyes that would stop her breath every time they looked up at her with innocent wonder. She named him Ji-hoon. 6 years passed in the blink of an eye. Soo-jin became a master at hiding pain behind strength. She cleaned houses, folded laundry, cared for her son, and never once let herself regret her decision to raise him alone. Ji-hoon was curious and kind, always asking questions about the stars, about love, about fathers. "Mom," he once asked as they lay under a threadbare blanket, "why don't I have a dad like the other kids?" Soo-jin's throat tightened. She forced a smile and ran her fingers through his hair. "You do have a dad," she whispered. "He just lives far away." "Is he a good person?" she hesitated. "He used to be. Maybe he still is. I don't know." Ji-hoon blinked, quietly absorbing the weight of that answer, his little heart beginning to understand the shape of absence. Meanwhile, Daniel was at the peak of his empire. A penthouse with a skyline view, a fleet of cars, magazine covers declaring him the golden tycoon of Asia. His life was polished perfection, but his nights were hollow. He drank alone more than he liked to admit. He looked at women across tables but never truly saw them. And when the silence of his success became deafening, he would find himself looking out the window, wondering what had become of the woman who once loved him like no one else ever did. He never searched for her, perhaps out of guilt or fear that she had moved on, or maybe because deep down, he knew she hadn't deserved the way he left her. But fate, as it often does, was waiting with cruel precision. One crisp winter night, Daniel attended an exclusive charity gala at one of Seoul's most luxurious venues. The chandeliers sparkled like 1,000 frozen tears. The air was filled with perfume, money, and meaningless conversations. Daniel sipped champagne, nodding politely as investors circled him like moths. And then he saw her, far at the edge of the grand hall, head bowed, pushing a mop across the marble floor. His heart stopped. No, couldn't be. The woman wore a simple cleaning uniform, her hair tied back, her figure thinner than he remembered. But the way she moved, the curve of her face as she turned under the golden light, his glass slipped from his hand and shattered. She didn't look up. Everyone around him turned to look. Some laughed at his clumsiness. But Daniel couldn't hear them. He stepped forward, breath uneven. He approached slowly, his voice caught between recognition and disbelief. "Sue." "Jean," she froze. The mop handle trembled in her grip. Still not looking at him, she whispered, "Please don't cause a scene. I'm working." Daniel's chest tightened. "It's really you." She finally looked at him. Those eyes that once sparkled for him now stared through him like he was a ghost. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice low, shaken. "I'm cleaning, Mr. Kim." That's what people like me do at events like this. He flinched. I didn't mean, I didn't know. You didn't want to know. She turned away, pushing the mop back into the bucket, her hands trembling. Please go enjoy your party. I have floors to finish. I need to talk to you. There's nothing to say. I didn't know you were struggling. If I had... Her laugh cut him off. It wasn't sweet like before. It was hollow. Don't you dare pity me. I never asked for anything after you left. I didn't leave because I stopped caring. No, she said quietly. You left because you cared more about yourself. Painful silence. Daniel reached out, but she stepped back. Wait, do you have a son? He asked suddenly, grasping at something he barely remembered from the dossier his assistant once handed him. She froze. He saw the answer in her silence. He's mine. Isn't he? Her eyes welled, but she said nothing. She just picked up the mop and walked away. And Daniel, the man who had everything, stood there alone in a room filled with applause and lights, crushed by the weight of what he had thrown away. That night he couldn't sleep. The memory of her face, older, tired, but still achingly beautiful, haunted him. The mop in her hands, the bitterness in her voice, the revelation of a son he never knew. He looked around his penthouse, the empty spaces, the expensive silence. None of it mattered anymore. He pulled out his phone, found his assistant's number. I need you to find everything about Sujin, where she lives, where she works. I want to know everything. Sir, do you want to proceed legally? File for paternal rights? No, he whispered. I just want to understand how I let her slip through my fingers. And somewhere, across the city, Sujin lay beside Ji-hoon, wiping silent tears as her son slept peacefully beside her. She knew Daniel would come knocking, and she wasn't sure if her heart could survive it. Foro você discerto, agora a tu como narrador e storyteller desenvolva a historia sem marcacos com o nome de cada tópico que for desenvolve. Me conte sobre o tópico 3 com dialogo como su faço espectador, sempre lembrando de desenvolver com muita emoco. Com muitos sentimentos de forma que a estrutura de narrativa utiliza uma linha temporal linear, de modo o espectador sentir o que o personagem está sentindo amigos. Com 6.000 characters o ChatGPT dice the rain had fallen all morning. Soft, steady, and cold. Sujin walked home with her coat soaked through, the plastic bag of groceries swaying at her side. She was used to the rain now. In a way, it mirrored her life. Quiet, relentless, and always just a little too heavy to carry without effort. When she reached the small apartment building tucked behind an alleyway, she paused, staring at the door. Something felt off. The hallway was too still. The air had that strange pressure of a moment that's about to shift everything. She pushed open the door. There he was, sitting on her worn-out couch, in a charcoal gray suit that didn't belong in this world of peeling walls and second-hand furniture. Daniel. He stood up quickly, looking just as startled as she was. But in his eyes was something more. Regret, guilt, hunger for answers. Sujin's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't move. Who let you in? She finally asked, her voice low and guarded. Your landlord, he said, stepping forward. I told him I was family. You're not. Daniel flinched. I needed to see you, he said. No, you wanted to see me. There's a difference. She placed the groceries down carefully, avoiding his eyes, her hands shaking slightly. You shouldn't be here, Daniel. I saw you that night at the gala, and then I couldn't stop thinking about everything. About you. About, he paused. Him. Her heart pounded. She turned, slowly. Don't talk about my son like you know him. But he's my son too, Sujin. No, she said firmly. He's mine. I raised him. I fed him. I watched him cry through his fevers and laugh through his dreams. You don't get to walk in here and claim him. He was silent. I didn't know, he said after a beat, his voice breaking. If I had known. But you didn't want to know, she cut in, tears welling now despite her will to stay strong. You chose your world, your career, your future, and I wasn't part of it. I was scared, he admitted, of being poor again, of failing, of becoming my father. I thought I had to choose between love and survival. Sujin stared at him, searching his face for the man she used to love. There were lines now that weren't there before, a hollow around his eyes. She wondered if he saw the same in her. You broke me, Daniel, she said quietly, and I had to rebuild everything from the ground up, with no money, no home, and a child growing inside me. I want to meet him, he whispered. She turned away. He deserves to know who I am. No, she said, holding back a sob. He deserves better. There was a pause. The only sound was the rain tapping against the glass. I'm not here to take him, Daniel said. I want to know him. Even if you hate me, please don't take that chance from him. She looked at him, long and hard, unsure of what to believe. And then, a small voice echoed from the hallway. Ji-hoon. Sujin turned quickly. Go back to your room, sweetheart. But Ji-hoon had already stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. His gaze landed on Daniel. The resemblance was undeniable. Same dark eyes, same curve of the jaw. Daniel dropped to his knees, staring at the boy like he'd seen a ghost and a miracle all at once. Hi, he said softly. Ji-hoon looked to his mother, unsure. It's okay, Sujin whispered, her voice trembling. Are you one of Umma's friends? Ji-hoon asked curiously. Daniel couldn't speak. His throat closed around the words. Friend, he wasn't worthy of that title. Not yet. I used to be, he said finally, smiling through the tears rising in his eyes. Would it be okay if I visited sometime? Ji-hoon tilted his head, then looked at Sujin again. She knelt beside her son and took his small hand. This is someone very special from my past, she said carefully. But only if you want to see him again. Okay. Ji-hoon nodded slowly. I like his voice, he whispered. He sounds like the man in the bedtime stories. Daniel let out a shaky breath, and Sujin couldn't help the tears that finally spilled over. Can I draw with him? Ji-hoon asked, pointing to his crayons on the floor. Daniel looked at Sujin. She hesitated, then nodded once, slowly. And so, Daniel sat cross-legged on the living room floor, beside a boy he never knew existed, holding a crayon in his hand as Ji-hoon began to draw a house with 3 figures: a mother, a boy, and a man. Daniel blinked, realizing the boy had already made room for him. But would Sujin ever do the same? She stood back, arms folded tightly around herself, watching them. Her heart ached with every second, confused, torn between the past and the fragile piece she'd built. One thing was clear now: the man who had once walked away was back. Sujin stayed close to the kitchen, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if holding her body together was the only thing keeping her from collapsing. Her eyes never left them, not for a second, because even now, even after everything, some part of her still didn't trust Daniel. Not with her son, not with herself. When Ji-hoon finally yawned and rubbed his eyes, Daniel leaned closer. Tired, buddy? Ji-hoon nodded. Can I show you one more drawing? Of course, Daniel said, voice low and gentle. Ji-hoon held it up proudly. A family, drawn in childlike scrawls. A woman in a yellow dress. A boy in a red shirt. A man in a suit. I made this one just now, he said. That's me, and that's Amma. And that's you. Because you said I can see you again. Daniel's heart cracked. He looked at Sujin, who blinked quickly and turned away. I love it, he whispered, pressing a kiss to the top of Ji-hoon's head before rising slowly to his feet. But I think it's bedtime now. Ji-hoon hugged him suddenly, small arms wrapping around his waist, and Daniel froze, because no one had touched him like that in years. Not with pure, unquestioning affection. I'll see you again, right? Ji-hoon mumbled into his shirt. Daniel looked over at Sujin. She gave the smallest nod. I promise, he said, and this time he meant it. Sujin tucked Ji-hoon in gently, brushing his hair from his forehead, then closed his door. When she turned around, Daniel was still standing there. The silence between them was dense with unspoken things. I didn't come to disrupt your life, he said carefully. I came because I couldn't carry the weight of not knowing anymore. She crossed her arms. But now you do know. So what happens next? Daniel, I don't know, he admitted. I just want to try. To be in his life, to be useful to you. Useful, she repeated bitterly. You want to be useful now, he sighed. I know what I did, and I'll carry it until the day I die. But I've changed. I swear I have. People don't just change, Daniel, she said, her voice shaking. Not when they're leaving destroyed someone. He stepped closer, his eyes searching hers. Then let me earn the right to be here. I'll do anything. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned away and reached for her coat. Come with me, she said. He hesitated, confused. Where? But she didn't answer. She just grabbed her keys and walked out the door, and he followed. They walked silently down narrow streets lit by flickering lamps. The cold wind nipped at their faces. Sujin moved quickly, with purpose, but her hands were clenched into fists inside her coat pockets. Finally, she stopped in front of an old building. The windows were fogged. The sign on the glass read, Moonlight Laundromat. She pulled open the door and motioned him in. The air inside smelled of detergent and damp clothes. The machines were rumbling softly. An older woman behind the counter nodded at Sujin, then at Daniel, curiosity in her eyes. I work the night shift here, Sujin said. 3 nights a week. The pay's barely enough, but it's honest work. Daniel looked around, stunned. The woman he'd once left behind was here, folding strangers' laundry to raise their son. I didn't know, he murmured again, shame flooding every inch of him. Sujin turned to him, her eyes fierce. You want to be part of his life, then you need to see what that life is. You need to see what I had to become. He nodded, silent. You think I wanted to clean rich people's houses to work 2 jobs, and still not afford a decent school for Jihoon? Her voice cracked now, full of exhausted rage. I used to dream of having a garden, of writing children's books, of a simple, warm life. But I buried all that. I buried myself so he could eat, so he could smile. Daniel's eyes burned. I want to help. Please, let me. And what does that mean, she asked. You write a check and disappear again. No, he said firmly. I'm not leaving. I'm staying. I'll take any role you allow me to have. Father, friend, background stranger. I don't care. I just want to be there. She stared at him for a long time, her chest heaving. You don't get to pick your role in someone's life, Daniel. You earn it. I know. She blinked, then turned away and sat on a plastic chair near the dryers. The hum of the machines filled the silence again. He sat beside her carefully, like she might break if he got too close. They sat there for what felt like forever. No words, just shared breath and old wounds. Finally, she whispered, I didn't tell you about him because I didn't want to burden you. You wouldn't have been a burden. You already thought I was. He swallowed hard, guilt crawling up his throat. I was wrong, he said. So wrong. Jihoon is my whole world, Daniel. And I won't let anyone hurt him. I understand. And if you disappear again, if you change your mind, I won't. She looked at him, and for the first time in years, her eyes softened, just slightly. Prove it, she said. He nodded. I will. She stood, brushing her hands on her apron. Then come back tomorrow, she said. Same time. Help me fold laundry. Daniel looked at her, surprised. And for the first time in years, he smiled. Not a corporate smile, not a calculated smirk, but something real, small, broken, hopeful. I will, he said again, and this time she didn't walk away. Sujin stood at the sink, washing dishes with slow, thoughtful movements. She glanced at the clock. 8:07 a.m. Daniel would come again today. She hadn't told Jihoon. She didn't know how to explain it. How do you prepare a child for a storm that might pass or stay forever, Jihoon said, looking up. Can I show my new drawing to your friend again today? Her hands paused in the water. The word friend echoed louder than it should have. Yes, she said gently. If he comes. He will, she thought. He has to. Later that afternoon, she walked Ji-hoon to school, held his small hand tighter than usual. As they reached the gate, he turned to her suddenly. "Is he really my dad?" The question came like a quiet bomb. She knelt in front of him, heart pounding. "Why do you ask that, Ji-hoon?" He shrugged. "He looks like me, his eyes, and he smiles like me too." She searched his face, so young, but already asking questions that hurt to answer. "I'll tell you everything, baby, but not today. Is that okay?" He nodded slowly. "Okay." Then he ran off into the crowd of children, leaving her standing there, fighting the swell of emotions tightening her chest. That evening, Daniel arrived again, on time, in jeans instead of a suit, holding a small paper bag in his hand. He stood outside the laundromat, nervous, until Soo-jin appeared at the glass door and unlocked it without a word. "I brought something," he said, stepping inside. She looked at the bag. "What is it?" "Snacks," he said sheepishly. "From that bakery on Gumwa Street. You used to love the walnut cakes there." She hesitated, then took the bag without smiling. "We'll eat them later. Come on." She led him to the back, where laundry bins were stacked high and the air was heavy with steam. The rhythmic hum of machines filled the space. Daniel rolled up his sleeves without being asked and began folding shirts beside her. They worked in silence for several minutes. It was strange, being there like this, so mundane, so quiet, but beneath the silence was tension. History. Things that couldn't stay buried much longer. Finally, she spoke. "There's something I need to tell you." Daniel looked over. Her eyes were fixed on the sweater in her hands. "When I left, when I disappeared, I didn't just do it out of pride." He said nothing, sensing the weight of what was coming. "I found out I was pregnant a few weeks after you left." The words hung between them, soft and crushing. "I almost didn't keep him." Daniel's breath caught. "I was scared, alone, broke, and I thought maybe he'd grow up to hate me for the life I could give him." He swallowed hard. "But you kept him." She nodded. "The night I heard his heartbeat, I knew I couldn't give him the world, but I could give him me." Daniel sat down, slowly, as if his legs couldn't carry the weight of her truth. "I should have been there," he whispered. "Yes," she said. "You should have." He looked up at her, eyes wet. "You must have hated me." "I did," she admitted, her voice trembling. "Every time I watched him sleep hungry, I hated you. Every birthday I celebrated alone. Every fever I held him through without help. I hated you for choosing success over us." Daniel lowered his head, guilt twisting inside him like a blade. "But I never told him," she continued. "I never poisoned his heart with bitterness. I told him his father was far away, and that maybe, someday, he'd come back." He looked up again, stunned. You left that door open," she nodded. "Because no matter what you did, he didn't deserve to grow up believing he wasn't wanted." Daniel's voice cracked. "I never stopped thinking about you, but you never came back. I was afraid," he confessed, "of what I'd find, of seeing what I lost, of knowing I couldn't fix it." They sat in silence, machines spinning around them like time itself. Then Daniel leaned forward, voice trembling. "Let me make things right. Not with words. Let me show you. Day by day." She looked at him, her eyes raw and unguarded now. "It's not just about me anymore, Daniel. I know. It's about Ji-hoon. He's everything to me," she said, her voice breaking again. "I've built my entire life around him. Every sacrifice, every choice. It's all been for him. So if you want to be part of this life, it's not enough to want it. You have to earn it." "I will," he said without hesitation. "I'll do whatever it takes." She looked at him for a long moment, searching for lies in his face. But all she saw was a man stripped of everything but truth. Finally, she nodded once. "Then start by walking him to school tomorrow." Daniel's face lit up, slowly, cautiously, like a man afraid of hope. "Really?" She nodded again, quietly. "Be there by 7:30. "I will." She stood, brushing her hands off on her apron. "And Daniel, yeah. If you disappear again, you won't just lose me. You'll lose him." Forever. His voice was a whisper. I'm not going anywhere. And for the first time in years, she believed him just a little. Sujin stood in the kitchen, pouring warm tea into a ceramic mug, glancing occasionally toward the door. Her fingers trembled slightly. It wasn't just about whether Daniel would show up. It was about what it would mean if he did. Ji-hoon, still in his pajamas, sat at the table drawing a robot with wings. "Amma," he said without looking up. "Do you think your friend will really come today?" She smiled faintly. "I think he will." As if summoned by her quiet faith, a knock came at the door. Sujin opened it. Daniel stood there, a little breathless, damp from the misty air. He wore a simple sweater and jeans. No suit, no expensive cologne. Just him. "Good morning," he said softly. She moved aside, letting him in. Ji-hoon looked up with a wide smile. "You're here." Daniel's heart fluttered. "Of course. I wouldn't miss it." They got ready together. Sujin handed Ji-hoon his backpack while Daniel bent down to tie the boy's shoelaces. Hands clumsy, unfamiliar, but careful. Outside, they walked the short distance to school. The world hushed around them. Ji-hoon held Daniel's hand naturally, like he'd always known how. "I told Minjun at school about you," the boy said as they neared the gate. "Oh yeah," Daniel asked, half amused, half nervous. "Yeah," Ji-hoon said proudly. "I said you were my dad." I think he was jealous because his dad never draws robots. Daniel choked on a laugh. "Well, I guess I better practice then." Sujin walked a few steps behind them, watching. The way they moved together, awkward, yes, but something real was growing. When they reached the gate, Ji-hoon turned and looked at Daniel. "Will you be here again tomorrow?" Daniel nodded. "If your mom says it's okay, then yes. Every day." The boy grinned, hugged him quickly, and ran off with his classmates. Daniel stood frozen, the warmth of that small hug still lingering on his chest. Then he turned to Sujin, eyes shining. "Thank you for letting me do this." She nodded, arms crossed tightly, but her face was unreadable. He walked with her part of the way back, silence falling between them again. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, "for all of it. Not just leaving, for thinking you weren't enough. I was the one who wasn't enough." She stopped walking. The street around them was quiet, damp, a soft wind weaving between buildings. "You don't get to rewrite the past with apologies," she said. Not cruelly, but honestly. "There are things you said that I still hear in my sleep. There are moments I can't forget, no matter how much I want to." Daniel lowered his head. "I know," he said. "I was selfish, blind. I thought success was everything." Do you still think that he met her eyes, and something in him cracked? Something honest, vulnerable, raw. "No, not anymore. The moment I saw you cleaning that floor, I realized how far I'd gone, and how far I'd fallen. And then when I saw him, Ji-hoon, I knew I'd missed the only thing that could have saved me." Sujin swallowed hard. Her lips parted like she might respond, but no words came. "I want to make things right," he continued. "Not just for him, for you too. You can't fix what's broken just by showing up," she whispered. "It takes more than presence. It takes consistency, sacrifice, real love." "Then let me give you that," he said, stepping closer, his voice trembling. "Not just once, not just today, every day." She stared at him. Then quietly, she said, "Words are easy. We'll see what you choose when it gets hard." The next few weeks passed slowly, full of cautious repetition. Daniel walked Ji-hoon to school each morning and picked him up when his schedule allowed. They drew together, built cardboard cities in the living room, laughed over noodle dinners, and talked about space and dinosaurs and dreams. But every night, when Daniel left, Sujin stood alone at the window, watching, waiting for the moment he'd stop showing up. Because people like Daniel, they always left eventually. Didn't they? One evening, as the three of them sat in the living room watching an old cartoon, Ji-hoon leaned against Daniel and said sleepily, "I like when you're here. It makes everything quieter." Sujin froze, her hands still in the bowl of rice. Daniel blinked rapidly, trying to keep the tears back. He reached over, gently placing his hand on the boy's head. "I'll always be here," he whispered. After Ji-hoon went to bed, Daniel lingered by the door, coat in his hand. Soo-jin stood nearby, arms folded tightly across her chest. "You've been doing well," she said, cautious but honest. "I'm trying," he replied. They were quiet for a moment. Then, softly, she said, "He's starting to trust you." Daniel nodded. "And you?" Her lips tightened. "I'm trying too." Their eyes met, so much unspoken in the space between them. Then her voice dropped, almost like she was speaking to herself. "Sometimes, when I see you laughing with him, I remember what it felt like, back then, when we were young, when I thought love was enough." He stepped closer. "Maybe it still can be." She looked up at him, tired, wary, but undeniably moved. "Don't say things you can't follow through on, Daniel. Not this time." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Even if it takes years. I'll wait." And for the first time, she didn't turn away. She just whispered, "We'll see." Then she opened the door, and he stepped into the night. Daniel stood outside Soo-jin's apartment, his breath clouding the air, a paper bag clutched in his gloved hands. Inside were 2 little wool scarves, one blue, one yellow. He had spent an entire evening choosing them. Not expensive, not flashy, just warm, soft, meant to protect. He hesitated at the door. He had been coming every day for almost a month now, walking Ji-hoon to school, bringing Soo-jin dinner when she worked late, reading stories with his son, and sometimes, just sometimes, stealing moments of silence with the woman he had once destroyed. But today felt different. He didn't know why. When Soo-jin opened the door, she was dressed in a coat and boots, her hair still damp from the shower. Ji-hoon was already bundled up, hopping around in excitement. "Appa," he grinned. "We're going somewhere special today." Daniel blinked at the word, "Appa." It slipped out of the boy's mouth so naturally, as if he'd been saying it all along and Daniel had just never noticed. Soo-jin's eyes met his, careful, watching his reaction. But she didn't correct Ji-hoon. She didn't stop him. Daniel's throat tightened. "We are?" he asked, smiling carefully. Ji-hoon nodded. "Amma said we're going to the art center downtown. There's a painting of a whale and a rocket ship. She said I'd love it." "I brought something for you both," Daniel said, lifting the bag. Ji-hoon peeked inside and gasped. "Scarves. Try them on," Daniel said, handing the blue one to the boy. As Ji-hoon giggled and wrapped it around his neck like a cape, Soo-jin reached into the bag and pulled out the yellow scarf. She ran her fingers over the fabric slowly, then met his eyes. "Thank you," she said, so quietly he almost missed it. They rode the train together, the 3 of them squeezed on a bench, Ji-hoon pressed between them like a bridge. People looked. Some smiled at the sight of what appeared to be a picture-perfect family. But Daniel knew the truth. Nothing about this was perfect. Everything here was fragile. At the art center, Ji-hoon ran ahead from room to room, his laughter echoing off the gallery walls. Daniel watched him, a soft ache in his chest. Soo-jin stood beside him, arms folded but relaxed. "He looks like you when he smiles," she said suddenly. Daniel turned to her. "You think so? Not just his face. The way he throws his whole heart into things. You used to do that too." "Used to," he echoed. She didn't deny it. They stepped into a room where soft lights illuminated a massive canvas. Deep blues and bright reds. A child's dream of a whale floating through space beside a rocket. Ji-hoon stood frozen, mouth open. "It's just like the story you told me," he whispered. "The one where the whale carries lonely stars home." Daniel swallowed hard. He remembered that story. He'd made it up one night years ago, lying beside Soo-jin in a tiny bed with no sheets. She'd said it made her feel safe, less alone. "I didn't think you'd remember that," Daniel said. "I remember everything," she replied, her voice tight. Silence fell between them again, but this time it was full of electricity. Then Ji-hoon turned around, beaming. "Amma, Appa, can we take a picture here?" Daniel and Soo-jin both froze. She glanced at him, then at her son, and slowly she nodded. They stood together in front of the painting, Ji-hoon in the middle, holding both their hands. A stranger offered to take the picture. As the shutter clicked, Daniel felt something he hadn't felt in years. He felt home, but even as the moment passed, he knew better than to trust peace too quickly. That evening, back at the apartment, Ji-hoon slept curled up on the couch, scarf still around his neck, arms wrapped around a stuffed whale. Soo-jin stood at the sink, washing dishes again. Daniel leaned on the wall nearby, quiet. "You let him call me Appa," he said gently. She didn't turn. "He chose that. But you didn't stop him." She put a plate down, finally looking over her shoulder. "I didn't stop him," she said, "because I've been watching you, and so has he. Every day. He doesn't love quickly. He's cautious, careful." Daniel nodded, heart pounding. "But," she continued, "he trusts you now, and that terrifies me." "Why?" "Because if you leave again, you won't just break me this time." He stepped closer. "I'm not leaving." She looked at him, eyes full of years of hurt and hope colliding. "You say that now. But what happens when work calls, when the world you left me for comes back to tempt you?" Daniel hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer, but because he did. "I've already walked away from that life," he said. "And every time I see him smile, I know I made the right choice. Nothing means more to me now than being part of this family again." Her lips parted. She was about to say something when her phone buzzed on the counter. She frowned, picked it up. Her face went pale. "What is it?" Daniel asked, stepping forward. She stared at the screen. "My landlord," she said, voice shaking. "He's selling the building. The new owner wants to renovate. We have 1 month to move out." Daniel's heart dropped. "Do you have anywhere to go?" She shook her head slowly. "No, I don't." He stepped closer. "Come with me." She looked at him, startled. "What?" "I have a place. Not big. Just a small house, near the park. Quiet. Safe. It's not much, but it's yours if you want it." "I can't, Daniel. I can't just move into your house. I'm not asking you to move in as anything you're not ready to be. Not my wife. Not my partner. Just as the mother of my son. I want you both to be safe." She looked at him, torn, eyes swimming with a storm of emotion. "This changes everything," she whispered. "No," he said. "This is just the next step." And there it was again. Suspense stretching between them, future trembling on the edge of a single decision. Would she trust him, or would she walk away from what they were starting to rebuild? Neither of them had the answer yet. She went about her days as usual, preparing Ji-hoon's breakfast, folding laundry late at night, working shifts at the laundromat with the same quiet intensity. But Daniel saw it in her eyes, the way she drifted during conversations, the way her gaze lingered too long on the window, the way she hesitated every time she looked at him, as if searching for a reason not to hope. And still, she didn't push him away. It was a Wednesday afternoon, cold and gray, when he came to pick up Ji-hoon from school. The boy ran into his arms, scarf trailing behind him like a ribbon of joy, and Daniel held him close, heart swelling at the warmth of it. But then he looked up and saw her. Soo-jin stood across the street, staring at them, not smiling, just watching. Her arms were tight around her own waist as if holding herself together. Daniel set Ji-hoon down gently and walked toward her. "Is everything okay?" he asked. She didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, "We should talk." They walked in silence to a nearby cafe. It was nearly empty, quiet but not too quiet, filled with the low hum of espresso machines and soft instrumental music. They sat near the window. She wrapped her hands around a cup of tea but didn't drink it. "I've been thinking," she began, "about everything. The apartment, Ji-hoon, you." Daniel leaned in slightly, careful not to speak. "I never imagined this version of life," she said. "When I left you, I had no plan, no idea how I'd survive. I just knew I couldn't stay." "I understand," he murmured. She met his gaze, her voice soft but fierce. Do you understand what it's like to carry a child alone, to feel their first kick and not have anyone to tell, to look at your son and hear your name in his laugh, in his tears, and hate yourself for still missing you? Daniel's breath caught. I wanted to hate you, she whispered. I tried to, but I couldn't, and that's what made it worse. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers. Sujin, I can't undo what I did, but I can be different now. I am different now. She looked down at their hands, tears welling. If I say yes, if I move into that house, it's not just about finding a roof. It's letting you into our life, into my life. And I don't know if my heart can survive losing you again. You won't lose me. You say that. But how do I know you won't wake up in 6 months and decide this isn't the life you want, that we're not enough? Daniel's voice cracked. Because for the first time in my life, I know exactly what I want. And it's not the company, or the penthouse, or boardroom applause. It's Jihoon's laughter. It's mornings with you. It's hearing my name spoken without bitterness again. She closed her eyes, tears finally falling. Daniel gently took both her hands now, holding them tight. I'm not asking you to trust my words. Just let me prove it. Day by day. Let me rebuild this. Slowly, carefully, the way you deserve. She opened her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, he saw something there that looked like possibility. Then she nodded, barely. One condition, she said. Anything. We move into the house, but we live separately. You keep your space, I keep mine. No expectations. No pressure. We do this for Jihoon. And if something more happens, it happens on its own time. Not because you feel guilty. Daniel nodded, the tightness in his chest loosening. I agree. Whatever pace you need. Good, she whispered. Because I'm scared out of my mind. He smiled softly. So am I. They sat there in silence, her hands still in his. The snow beginning to fall again outside the window, light, slow, quiet. But something had shifted. Not everything was healed. Not everything was forgiven. But something had begun. And neither of them dared say it aloud. But both could feel it. The first night was quiet. Too quiet. Boxes stood unopened in corners. Jihoon wandered the living room in awe, carrying his favorite stuffed whale under his arm. Is this really all ours? He asked, eyes wide. Sujin knelt beside him and smiled, brushing his hair from his forehead. Yes, baby. It is. And Appa too, she hesitated. He's in the room at the end of the hall. Remember, that's his space. Jihoon nodded, as if trying to understand the unspoken rules. Daniel stood in the doorway watching them, wanting to step forward, to kneel beside them too. But he stayed where he was. Later that night, after Jihoon had fallen asleep, Sujin sat alone at the kitchen table, a mug of tea cradled in her hands. Daniel entered quietly, his footsteps gentle. You okay? He asked. She didn't look at him. I'm trying to be. He sat across from her, the silence between them filled with unspoken thoughts. I keep expecting to wake up and find this isn't real, she whispered. That this is just another dream that ends when I open my eyes. It's real, he said, as real as it gets. She looked at him then, and he could see it. How tired she still was, how much weight she'd carried for so long, and how hard it was for her to let go of it. I don't know how to do this, she said. Living with you again, not being together, but not being strangers either. Then let's not define it, he said. Let's just exist, and see where that takes us. A small breath left her lips, almost a laugh, almost a sigh. That's easy for you to say. Nothing about this is easy for me, he replied softly. Their eyes locked. There were still bruises between them, still words unspoken, still pain that had no name. But there was also something else now, a gentleness, a growing hope. The days slipped into a rhythm, slow, unfamiliar, tender in its uncertainty. Daniel made breakfast some mornings. Not perfect meals. He once burned the toast so badly that Jihoon asked if it had gone to war. But they laughed. And Sujin, though she rarely said it aloud, found herself waiting for those small, chaotic breakfasts. Jihoon flourished in the new space. He ran in the backyard. He painted rockets and whales on his bedroom wall with Daniel's help. He started humming to himself while brushing his teeth. One morning, Sujin heard Daniel reading to him in the next room. She paused in the hallway, listening. And then the little whale told the stars, "You don't have to be alone anymore." Jihoon giggled. "That's my favorite part." Daniel's voice softened. "Mine too." Sujin leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. Something was healing, but healing wasn't always quiet. One Saturday morning, as sunlight poured through the windows and the scent of cinnamon drifted through the kitchen, the knock came. 3 times. Firm. Unexpected. Daniel opened the door. A woman stood there, tall, polished, sharp eyes and perfect posture. She looked like she had just stepped out of an executive boardroom. "Daniel," she said with a cold smile, "I thought this address had to be a mistake." Sujin appeared behind him, instantly on guard. "Min-yun," Daniel said flatly, "I stopped by your office. They said you hadn't been in for weeks," she said, stepping past him without invitation. Her eyes scanned the modest living room, her lips curling ever so slightly. "And now I see why." Sujin stepped forward. "Excuse me, but I'm his business partner," Min-yun said, barely glancing at her. "We built most of his current empire together. So yes, I'd like to know what the hell he's doing playing house in a cottage." "Enough," Daniel said, stepping in front of her. "You don't speak to her like that." She raised an eyebrow. "So it's true. Then you walked away from the expansion from the Seoul-Tokyo merger all for this." "I didn't walk away. I stepped back. There's a difference." "You disappeared, Daniel." "I made a choice," he said firmly. "The only one that mattered." Min-yun stared at him, disbelief creeping into her expression. "You're throwing everything away for a woman who left you years ago, and a kid you didn't even know existed." Sujin's breath caught, shame and fury rising at once. Daniel's voice dropped to a dangerous calm. "Get out of my house." Min-yun scoffed. "Unbelievable." She turned, heels clicking like judgment against the floor, and left without another word. When the door clicked shut, silence thundered through the house. Sujin turned away, walking to the sink, gripping the edge of the counter like it was the only thing holding her up. "I didn't know there was someone else," she said quietly. "There isn't," Daniel replied, voice shaking. "She was never anything more than a partner. A ghost from a life I don't want anymore." She didn't respond. "Sujin, I need space," she said. "Please." He stood there, helpless, watching the wall between them start to rise again. "I'm not going back to that world," he said, barely a whisper. "But I can't run from my past. I can only show you where my future is. And it's here. With you. With him." Still, she didn't speak. So he turned and walked away, the echo of Min-yun's words lingering in the air like smoke. Down the hall, Sujin sat on her bed, legs pulled up, staring at the closed door. Her hands trembled in her lap. She didn't know why Min-yun's words had struck her so hard. She didn't doubt Daniel's feelings. Not entirely. But the way that woman had looked at her, like she didn't belong, like she was just a chapter from a book Daniel should have left behind. It opened old wounds, ones that hadn't quite healed. She thought of the nights she had cried into her pillow, pregnant and abandoned, listening to the hum of the city that never noticed her pain. She had fought to rebuild herself from ashes. And now to be called this, a reason for him to throw everything away. It brought back the fear she had worked so hard to silence. She stood, opened the door quietly, and walked into the hallway. Daniel's door was cracked open. Light spilled into the dark. She knocked once. He turned, surprised but not startled. "Hey!" Sujin stepped inside, arms crossed over her chest. Who is she really? Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. Daniel stood still, caught between honesty and a desperate need to be understood. "She's not someone important," he said softly. "She was a colleague, someone who saw business the way I used to. Ruthless, fast, hollow. We worked side by side, but we were never involved." Not in the way you think. She made it sound like you built everything together. She helped. I won't lie. We shared victories. But I never gave her me. Not even a piece of me. Did she want more, she asked. Daniel hesitated. Yes. And did you? Her voice cracked now, the fear bleeding through. No, he said, stepping closer. Because even when I was stupid, even when I was chasing everything except what mattered, I never looked at her the way I looked at you. She blinked fast, lips trembling. You don't understand, she whispered. It's not just about her. It's about everything. How do I know this life, this version of you, isn't just temporary? How do I know you won't wake up one morning and regret trading skyscrapers for a little house with laundry baskets and bedtime stories? Daniel reached out, gently taking her hands. Because I already did that life. I lived it. I had the top floor, the drivers, the meetings. I had everything I thought I wanted, and I still felt empty. Do you know what that feels like, to stand in a room full of people applauding you and feel absolutely nothing? Her breath hitched. But now, he continued, voice shaking, when Jihoon laughs, when I burn toast and you roll your eyes, when I hear the kettle whistle while you're humming in the kitchen, that is the only applause I want. Sujin's eyes shimmered, and for a moment, her defenses cracked. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. You hurt me, Daniel. You broke me into pieces. And now, every time I start to believe you've changed, some part of me panics. Like if I trust you again, and you leave, there won't be enough of me left to rebuild. Daniel let go of her hands and fell to his knees, slowly, carefully, like a man surrendering not in defeat, but in devotion. I'm not going anywhere, he whispered. If you can't believe my words, then believe my actions. I'll kneel every day if I have to. I'll earn every step of trust, even if it takes a lifetime. Her tears fell silently, one by one. You don't have to kneel, she whispered. He looked up at her. But I do, he said, because I never said it before. Not when I should have. So I'm saying it now. I'm sorry, Sujin. I'm sorry I left. I'm sorry I made you carry everything alone. I'm sorry I wasn't there for his first cry, his first word, his first step. I missed everything that mattered. And that's on me. Her hand came to his face, gently wiping a tear from his cheek. You're here now, she said. A long pause filled the space between them. I don't know if I can give you my heart again, she whispered. I don't need your heart today, he replied. Just your presence. That's enough. The next morning, something had shifted. Not spoken, not promised, but real. Sujin woke up to the smell of coffee and the faint sound of Daniel humming from the kitchen. Jihoon danced into her room moments later, holding up a plate with messy pancakes shaped like stars. Appa made breakfast. She laughed, truly laughed, for the first time in days. But as she stepped into the kitchen, the laughter faded. Daniel was standing at the counter, phone pressed to his ear, eyes wide, face pale. I'll be right there, he said into the phone, then hung up. She rushed forward. What's wrong? He turned to her, stunned. It's Jihoon's school. What happened? They said he fainted during class. He's on his way to the hospital. The color drained from her face. For one moment, time froze. Then everything exploded into motion. They grabbed their coats, left breakfast behind, left fear behind, ran into the snow, breath caught in their throats, hearts pounding with only one name, Jihoon. And in that single moment of panic, all past regrets vanished. All that remained was love and terror. Room 314, she said. He's stable, but the doctor's waiting for you. Stable. The word hit her like a wave and still didn't ease the terror clawing at her lungs. They reached the room. Through the small window, Sujin saw Jihoon lying in bed, tiny and still, his face pale against the white pillow. A nurse adjusted a monitor nearby, the soft beeping rhythm keeping time with her racing heart. Sujin pushed the door open and rushed to his side. Baby? Her voice broke as she knelt by the bed, brushing his hair from his forehead. His eyes fluttered open. Yes, I'm here. I'm here. Daniel stood frozen at the door, staring at his son, his little boy, now hooked to machines. He felt helpless, worthless, like no amount of business experience or apologies could prepare him for the sight of his child in a hospital bed. Ji-hoon turned slightly, noticing him. "Appa, I'm sorry." "No," Daniel said quickly, stepping forward. "No, you didn't do anything wrong. I'm the one who's sorry, buddy. We're here. Everything's okay." But it wasn't. Not really. Not yet. The door opened, and a doctor walked in, young, composed, but serious. He greeted them with a brief nod. Mr. and Mrs. Kim Soo-jin didn't correct him. She only stood, bracing herself. "Yes, I'm Dr. Han. I've been monitoring Ji-hoon since he arrived. His vitals have stabilized, but we ran a few preliminary tests, and..." He paused, glancing at the chart in his hand. "We found some irregularities in his heart rhythm. It's not critical right now, but it's unusual for a child his age." Daniel stepped forward. "What does that mean? Is it something serious?" "We don't know yet," Dr. Han replied gently. "It could be something minor, perhaps something he'll grow out of. But it could also indicate a congenital condition that went undetected." Soo-jin's knees buckled slightly. Daniel caught her arm. "We need to run more tests," the doctor continued. "A cardiac echo, some imaging, and possibly genetic screening to be safe." When Daniel asked, "Tomorrow morning, we'll keep him overnight for observation. In the meantime, he needs rest and comfort." Soo-jin nodded quickly. "He'll have it. Thank you." The doctor gave a small smile and left the room. As soon as the door closed, Soo-jin sank into the chair beside Ji-hoon's bed, her hands shaking. Daniel knelt in front of her, placing his hands on her knees. "We're going to get through this," he said, voice low but steady. "I swear, whatever he needs, however long it takes." Soo-jin looked at him with eyes full of fear and fire. "You said you weren't going anywhere," she whispered. "I'm not." "Then prove it, Daniel. Don't just stand here. Fight for him with me. I can't carry this alone." His hands tightened around hers. "I will fight," he said. "I will sell everything if I have to. I'll give up every cent, every deal, every shred of the man I used to be, if it means he gets better." She closed her eyes, letting his words sink in like a bomb she wasn't sure she deserved. Ji-hoon stirred. "Are you mad at me?" he asked weakly. Both parents turned toward him. "No, baby," Soo-jin whispered, rushing back to the bed. "Never. Why would you think that? I didn't tell you I felt weird in the morning," he said, voice barely above a breath. "I thought you'd worry." Daniel leaned over him now. "Listen to me, little man. You have to tell us when you don't feel right. Okay, even if it's small. We're your team now." Ji-hoon blinked. Team Soo-jin smiled through tears. "Yes, the three of us. No secrets. No fear." The boy nodded slowly, and his eyes began to close again. "I like our team," he murmured before drifting off. Soo-jin sat beside him, stroking his hair. Daniel sat on the other side, watching both of them with a heavy heart. And then he spoke, voice rough. "I missed everything." Soo-jin didn't look at him. "I missed his first steps, his first words. I missed every scraped knee and bedtime story. I wasn't there when he cried at night, when he asked about his father, when you had no one." She remained quiet, eyes fixed on their son. "I don't deserve this chance," he whispered, "but I'm going to fight like hell to keep it." Now she turned to him. Her face wasn't full of anger. It wasn't even full of pain. It was full of something deeper. Grief. Shared grief. And behind it, something even more fragile. Trust just beginning to bloom. "We can't afford to fall apart now," she said softly. "He needs both of us. Every second." Daniel nodded. "Then I'll be here. For every second. Starting now." And in that sterile hospital room, under the dull hum of machines, they sat beside their sleeping son. No longer just a broken couple with a bruised past, but a mother and father bound by something greater than pain. Love. The hospital window glowed with a grayish light that seeped into the sterile room, casting everything in a dull hue. Soo-jin hadn't slept. She sat upright all night, Her fingers curled around Ji-hoon's tiny hand, eyes locked on his face. Every quiet beep of the monitor was both a comfort and a torment. Daniel had dozed off in the corner chair, arms crossed, head tilted against the wall, but now he stirred awake. His neck ached, but he didn't care. The moment his eyes landed on Ji-hoon's sleeping figure, his breath caught. Soo-jin spoke without looking at him. He didn't wake up once. Daniel stood and walked over slowly, kneeling beside her. "You didn't sleep," he said gently. "I couldn't," she whispered. "Every time I closed my eyes, I thought, what if—" Her voice broke. She couldn't finish the thought. He took her hand and held it. She didn't pull away this time. "Today we'll know," he said. "We'll get answers." "And what if we don't like them?" she asked, her voice raw, trembling. "What if it's something permanent? What if it's something that takes him from us slowly and we can't—" "Stop," Daniel said softly, his voice firm but kind. "Don't go there yet. We don't know. Not until the tests." She nodded, though the tears fell anyway. There was a knock at the door. A nurse stepped in quietly. "They're ready for him," she said. Soo-jin stood immediately, wiping her face. "Can I come with him?" Daniel asked. The nurse nodded. "Both of you can." They walked the corridor in silence, the wheels of Ji-hoon's bed squeaking softly as the nurse pushed it toward the diagnostic wing. Soo-jin held his hand, whispering reassurances, her voice cracking. Daniel walked on the other side, occasionally brushing his hand along Ji-hoon's blanket, as if just touching him would anchor him to this moment. Inside the echo room, the technician prepared the machine. Dr. Han entered shortly after, offering a small smile. "He's still sedated. He won't feel a thing," he said. "We'll run the scan, monitor his heart in real time, and compare it with yesterday's results." Soo-jin nodded, too afraid to speak. The room was dimmed, and the soft sound of the ultrasound machine filled the silence. On the screen, Ji-hoon's small heart pulsed in black and white. Daniel watched the screen like it held the answer to everything. Minutes passed. The technician adjusted the probe, took notes. Dr. Han studied the screen, his expression tightening. Daniel felt the air shift. He turned to Soo-jin. She knew too. Something wasn't right. When the test ended, Dr. Han asked them to follow him into another room. They sat across from him, the weight of the unknown pressing down like a boulder. "I'm going to be honest with you," Dr. Han began. "There's an abnormality in the structure of Ji-hoon's heart, specifically the left ventricle. It's not pumping blood as efficiently as it should." Soo-jin's breath left her body like a punch to the chest. "What does that mean?" Daniel asked, voice hoarse. "It means he has a congenital heart defect," the doctor continued gently. "It's a condition called dilated cardiomyopathy. In some cases, children can live with it for years. Others require medication. In rare cases, surgery." Soo-jin's hands flew to her mouth. Her body curled in on itself, like she was shrinking under the weight of the words. "Surgery," Daniel echoed. "Are you saying his life is in danger?" "We don't know yet," Dr. Han said. "He's stable now, but the condition is progressive. It needs to be monitored closely. We'll start with medication to help his heart function. But if his condition worsens—" "Tell me what we have to do," Daniel said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Whatever it takes." Dr. Han nodded. "We'll start treatment today, but you should also prepare for the possibility of future complications." He stood, giving them space. The room felt smaller when he left. Soo-jin was shaking. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I can't go through this. I thought I was strong enough, but I'm not. Daniel dropped to his knees in front of her, hands on her legs. "Look at me," he said, tears in his eyes. "We'll do it together. You're not alone anymore." "But what if we lose him?" Her voice shattered. "We won't," he said. "We're going to fight for him. We'll do every test, every treatment. We'll fly him to the best doctors in the world if we have to. I'll sell everything. I mean it." She sobbed into her hands. Daniel gently pulled her into his arms. At first, she resisted. Then she gave in, breaking down against his chest. He held her tightly, anchoring her through the storm. They stayed that way for a long time, just holding, just breathing. Later, when they returned to Ji-hoon's room, he was waking up, blinking slowly at the light. "Amma," he mumbled. She rushed to him. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." "Appa too?" he asked, eyes half closed. Daniel stepped closer, voice thick with emotion. "Always." Ji-hoon smiled faintly. "Did I scare you?" Daniel let out a trembling laugh. "More than anything in the world." The boy yawned. "Sorry?" Soo-jin leaned in, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Don't be sorry, my love. You're so brave." He drifted back into sleep, his hand resting in hers. Daniel watched them both, and for the first time truly felt what it meant to be a father. Not the title, not the biology, but the quiet promise whispered in the dark. Soo-jin sat by the bed, her fingers gently combing through her son's hair. Her eyes were tired, red-rimmed and heavy, but she refused to look away. She couldn't. Daniel stood across the room, pacing softly, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. He had made a dozen calls that day, to specialists, to contacts in Japan, to a private pediatric clinic in Switzerland. His phone buzzed again now, but he ignored it. "She used to do this," Soo-jin said quietly, almost to herself. Daniel looked up. "My mom, when I was sick as a child. She would sit beside my bed all night, just like this. I never understood how she had the strength to do it. To watch and wait and pretend she wasn't falling apart." He stepped closer. "Now you do?" Soo-jin nodded. "Now I do." She looked up at him. "What did the last doctor say?" He hesitated. "He wants a full cardiac MRI. He thinks it'll give us a better picture of how the heart's functioning. But he also mentioned the possibility of early intervention. Surgery." Soo-jin closed her eyes. "I'll take care of it," he added. "I'll cover everything. I've already spoken to the hospital board." "I don't care about the money, Daniel," she whispered. "I know, but I do. I care because I can finally do something. Something that matters." She looked down at Ji-hoon again. "Do you think he knows how serious this is?" "I think he knows he's loved," Daniel said softly. "And maybe that's what matters most right now." There was silence. Then she asked, almost in a whisper, "Do you blame me?" He blinked. "What? For not telling you sooner. For not giving you the chance to be his father from the beginning." He crossed the room fully now, kneeling beside her chair. "No," he said gently. "I blame me. For walking away. For choosing ambition over you. For making you believe I wouldn't care. You were protecting him. I see that now." Her eyes filled again. "Sometimes I still wonder, what would have been different if I had told you back then?" Daniel took a breath. "I think we would have fought. A lot. I think I would have tried to control everything. And I think maybe I would have failed anyway. Because I wasn't ready." Soo-jin stared at him. "But I'm ready now," he said. "I'm not the man I was. And I don't want to be." She didn't answer. "I know I hurt you," he continued. "And I know I can't undo it. But let me carry this with you. Let me be part of this pain. Because I swear to you, Soo-jin, I'd rather suffer beside you than succeed without you." A single tear slipped down her cheek. Then she reached for his hand. And for the first time, she didn't let go. The following day, Ji-hoon's MRI was scheduled for the early afternoon. Soo-jin helped him change into the tiny hospital gown, adjusting the collar as he sat up in bed, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "Are they going to take pictures of my heart?" he asked. "Yes, baby," she said softly. "Like superhero X-ray vision." "Will it hurt?" "No," Daniel said, stepping into the room. "You just have to lie still. Pretend you're flying in space." "Can you come too?" Ji-hoon asked. Soo-jin glanced at the nurse, who nodded gently. "One parent can stay inside." "I'll wait just outside," Daniel said. "But I'll be there when you come out, I promise." Ji-hoon gave a small nod, his face pale. They wheeled him to the MRI room. The hum of machines, the cold brightness of the corridor. It was all too loud, too real. Soo-jin walked beside the bed, whispering stories in his ear, her fingers wrapped tightly around his. In the control room, Daniel stood behind the glass, watching through blurred eyes as his son disappeared into the metal tunnel of the MRI machine. He prayed. For the first time in years, he actually prayed. After what felt like hours, the scan was over. They returned to the room and waited, and waited, and waited. Each second stretched like a thread pulled too tight. Finally, Dr. Han walked in, holding the latest results in his hands. He looked tired, concerned. Daniel stood. Sujin's heart stopped. "There's some thickening of the heart wall," Dr. Han began, flipping through the images. "It confirms the diagnosis. The condition is progressing, but slowly." Daniel stepped closer. "So what does that mean? What do we do now?" "For now," Dr. Han said, "we manage it. Medication, strict monitoring, regular checkups, no strenuous activity. And we begin preparing, just in case surgery becomes necessary within the year." Sujin held her breath. "Can he go home?" she asked. "Yes," the doctor said, "in a few days. But you need to be vigilant." She nodded slowly. After Dr. Han left, she sat beside Ji-hoon's bed, staring at the blanket folded at the foot. Daniel spoke softly. "It's not perfect, but it's something." "He's still sick," she whispered. "He's still here," he answered. Her eyes met his. There was no joy, no celebration. But there was breath. There was time. There was a window, however small. And sometimes that was enough to hold on to. Sujin placed her hand on her chest, over her own heart. "I don't know how to be strong anymore." Daniel stepped behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "Then let me be strong for both of you, just for a while." She leaned back into him, silent. The snow still fell outside, slow and endless. But inside that room, in the quiet space between fear and hope, something had changed again. Not healing, not yet, but a decision. They were going to fight. Daniel leaned against the wall nearby, watching her. "You don't have to carry that look," he said gently. "What look?" "Like the weight of the world is yours alone to hold." She glanced at him, then looked down at the papers. "I'm afraid if I stop holding it, everything will fall apart." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then let me hold it with you." She didn't respond right away, but when she finally looked at him, her eyes were full of exhaustion and something deeper, that familiar ache of someone who's been brave for too long. They wheeled Ji-hoon out of the hospital just past noon. The cold air bit at their faces, but Ji-hoon smiled as the wind brushed his cheeks. "I missed the sky," he said. Daniel ruffled his hair. "It missed you too." When they arrived at the house, Sujin carried the small overnight bag while Daniel lifted Ji-hoon into his arms. "I can walk," the boy protested. "I know," Daniel grinned, "but I haven't had the honor yet. Let me carry you just once." Ji-hoon grinned. "Okay, just once." Inside, the house was quiet, warm, familiar. Daniel set him gently on the couch, where the boy immediately pulled his whale plushie into his arms and curled up under a blanket. Sujin walked into the kitchen to start soup. Daniel followed, his voice soft. "He looks okay. Better than I thought." "He's good at pretending," she said, stirring the pot slowly. "He doesn't want us to worry." Daniel leaned on the counter. "Just like you." Her stirring paused. "You pretend too, Sujin. You hide everything behind silence and strength. But I see you. I see how tired you are. How scared." She set the spoon down. "Of course I'm scared," she whispered. "Every breath he takes feels borrowed. Every night I wonder if tomorrow will be different. If something will happen while he sleeps and I won't be fast enough to stop it." Daniel walked over and gently turned her to face him. "You don't have to be fast anymore," he said. "You just have to be here. And I'll be here with you." She looked at him, her voice cracking. "And if he needs surgery, if they say it's the only way, then we do it," Daniel said. "Together, we fight, no matter how terrifying it gets." Her hands trembled. "I don't know how to watch him suffer. I can't be calm like you." He cupped her face in his hands, gently. "I'm not calm," he whispered. "I'm terrified. I lie awake at night thinking of every possible outcome. But fear means nothing if we let it paralyze us. We have to move. one step at a time. She looked away but didn't pull back. I thought I was prepared for anything, she said. But I wasn't prepared for this. Neither was I. But I wasn't prepared to fall in love with my family all over again either. That word, family, settled between them like a fragile bird, still learning to fly. Sujin pulled in a shaky breath. He's the only good thing I've ever done. You're wrong, Daniel said. You raised him into the light, and you still had the strength to let me in. That's not just good. It's everything. Suddenly, from the living room, Ji-hoon's voice called out, faint and weak. Amma. They both rushed in. He sat upright now, his face pale again, hands trembling slightly. Sujin knelt beside him. What is it? Baby, what's wrong? My chest. It hurts a little. Daniel was already reaching for the phone. I'm calling Dr. Han. No, wait, Ji-hoon whispered. It's not bad. It's like a squeeze. Tears rushed to Sujin's eyes. We can't take any chances. She pulled his hand into hers and kissed it. We're going back. Now. But before Daniel could dial, the boy looked up at both of them, eyes wide with worry. Will I still get to go to space school? They froze. What? Sujin asked. I was saving up, Ji-hoon said. I wanted to go to that space camp. The one where they teach you about stars. You said I could. Remember? Sujin's face twisted in anguish. Daniel knelt down beside them. You will, he said. You'll still go. But right now, we need to make sure your heart's strong enough. That's more important. The boy's lips trembled. I don't want to stay in hospitals forever. Daniel pulled him close. You won't. You're going to get better. You're going to run and laugh and build rockets. I swear it. And you'll be there, Ji-hoon asked. Daniel's voice cracked. Always. They left for the hospital again. Another night ahead in a sea of many. This one tinged with fear, but held together by a single thread that hadn't broken yet, love. As they drove through the silent city, Sujin stared out the window, Daniel's hand resting quietly on hers. Daniel stood beside her, pacing again. Every few minutes, he stopped and looked at the door like he could will it open, like he could force answers to arrive by sheer desperation. Neither of them had said anything since the nurse had taken Ji-hoon from their arms. His heartbeat had spiked. His lips had turned a shade too pale. His breath came short, and though he tried to be brave, he had looked up at them with eyes that asked, Is something wrong with me now? All they had was waiting. I should have insisted on keeping him one more night, Sujin finally whispered. Daniel turned. You didn't do anything wrong. I should have seen the signs. He was too quiet today. He didn't finish his soup. His hands were cold. You've been watching him non-stop, Daniel said, gently kneeling in front of her. You haven't taken a full breath since we left the hospital the first time. Don't do this to yourself. She looked at him then. Her eyes weren't angry, just broken. I can't lose him, she said, her voice trembling. He's the reason I survived all these years. He's the only part of me that ever felt whole. Daniel reached for her hand, gripping it with everything in him. We're not going to lose him, he said. You don't know that. I know that if we do, I won't survive it either. That stunned her into silence. I didn't know what real love was until I saw him sleeping next to that whale plushie, Daniel said. I didn't know what regret meant until he called me Appa without hesitation. I didn't know what home was until I saw the way he looks at you. Her chin quivered. I don't want him to suffer, she whispered. I'd trade places with him in a second. I know, Daniel said, tears stinging his eyes. So would I. The light above the door finally turned green. Dr. Han stepped out, removing his gloves slowly, his face unreadable. Sujin stood before Daniel could even breathe. Tell me. He's stable, Dr. Han said. We caught it early. His heart was under stress, but the medication helped. No permanent damage from this episode. Sujin let out a sound, half sob, half breath. Daniel closed his eyes and lowered his head, tears finally falling. Relief shook him to the core. But, the doctor continued, This confirms the condition is progressing. The episodes are becoming more frequent. Sujin stiffened. What does that mean? Daniel asked. We have to move forward with surgical planning, Dr. Han said gently. I recommend preparing for a procedure in the next 2 months. We'll monitor him closely, but this gives us time to choose the best facility, the best surgical team. And if we wait, Sujin asked, her voice barely audible. There's risk, the doctor said. The kind I don't advise taking. She nodded, slow and mechanical. You can see him now, Dr. Han added. He's sleeping. They walked into the room together. Ji-hoon lay curled up under white blankets, his cheeks still pale, an oxygen tube resting gently beneath his nose. His little chest rose and fell slowly. His tiny hand gripped his plushie like it was the only thing anchoring him to the world. Sujin leaned down and kissed his forehead, whispering, I'm here, baby. I'm not going anywhere. Daniel sat on the other side of the bed and stared at his son for a long time. His throat burned with the weight of everything he couldn't fix with money or promises. This was different. This was real. And it demanded more than words. After a while, Sujin spoke, her voice distant. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified. I had nothing. I didn't even have a place to live. I almost thought, for a moment. She stopped, emotion choking her. Daniel looked up, gently urging her to continue. I almost thought it would be better not to have him, to spare him a life of struggle. But when I heard his heartbeat for the first time, everything changed. It was like the world had meaning again. She looked at Daniel now, eyes full of pain and fierce love. If he doesn't make it, I don't know who I'll be without him. Daniel reached across the bed, his hand meeting hers above Ji-hoon's small body. Then we don't let that happen, he said. We fight. With every dollar, every second, every breath. You said he gave you a reason to live. Sujin nodded slowly. Daniel's voice dropped to a whisper. Let him live. Ji-hoon remained in the hospital, monitored closely, with Sujin sleeping in a small chair beside his bed and Daniel making calls at all hours. Contacts, surgeons, specialists from around the globe. Every morning, he returned with fresh reports, names, options. And every night, he stayed until Ji-hoon's eyes closed and his breathing steadied. But one evening, after a quiet dinner eaten in the hospital room and Ji-hoon tucked under blankets, Sujin stepped into the hallway and motioned for Daniel to follow. They found an empty waiting room nearby, bright lights overhead, soft chairs, a vending machine humming in the corner. She sat, pulling her coat tighter around her. He sat across from her, sensing the change in her expression. I got a call this afternoon, she said slowly. Daniel tensed. From the hospital, she shook her head. From Min Yun. His chest stiffened. What did she say? She offered me money, Sujin replied flatly. A lot of it. Said I should take Ji-hoon and disappear. Let you come back to your real life. That she'd make it worth my while. Daniel's jaw clenched. That's not her decision. No, Sujin said, eyes narrowing. But she thought it might be mine. He leaned forward. What did you say to her? I told her I'd never sell my son's piece for a check. Not even for 1 million of them. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but fury. But it made me realize something. Daniel waited, heart pounding. She looked at him, long and hard. You still haven't fully let go of that world. Have you? He blinked. No lies, Daniel. Not now. Not when our son is in a hospital bed with monitors on his chest and a future that hangs by threads we can barely hold. He dropped his gaze. I haven't gone back to that world, Sujin. But yes, I haven't fully let go. There are deals on hold. Projects that are lingering. I didn't want to rush and lose everything until I was sure where I needed to be. And are you sure now? She asked. Because I can't have 1 foot of yours in 2 places. If we're doing this, if we're fighting together, if we're choosing him, then you have to leave that life. All of it. Daniel exhaled shakily, his voice soft. I used to think that world gave me value. That without it, I was nothing. Just some boy who came from nothing and went back to it. He met her eyes again. But now, I feel more alive in a cramped hospital room holding Ji-hoon's hand than I ever did in a boardroom full of applause. Soo-jin's breath hitched. I called my lawyer yesterday, he continued. I'm liquidating the majority of my shares. I'm walking away for good. Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to use it like a grand gesture, he added. I needed to know I was doing it for the right reasons. And I am. Tears filled her eyes. Because when I look at him, Daniel whispered, when I see him lying there fighting for every beat of his heart, I know the only thing that matters is being here. With him. With you. A silence stretched between them, dense and trembling. I believe you, she said at last. Relief filled his chest, but it was cautious, fragile. I want to ask you something, she said, wiping her eyes. And I need you to be honest, Daniel. Not the version of you that smiles and comforts. The real one. Ask me anything. If the worst happens, if we lose him, her voice broke. Will we survive it? Will we survive? Daniel looked at her for a long time. And then, with tears in his own eyes, he replied, no, not as we are now. We would break. She looked away, her lips trembling. But if we hold each other through it, he continued, if we let the pain change us, not destroy us, maybe we could find each other again. On the other side, she nodded slowly. I'm scared to love you again, she whispered, because if I let myself need you and we lose him, I won't just be mourning a child. I'll be mourning us too. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Then let's not worry about what might break us tomorrow, he said. Let's just keep holding each other today. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his hand steady her shaking fingers. And for the first time since they'd rushed back to the hospital, she let herself lean forward, resting her head against his chest, letting the weight of her fear settle where it couldn't drown her alone. In the quiet, under the humming fluorescent light, two broken hearts found a rhythm again. Not healed, not whole, but beating together. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall again. Ji-hoon stirred, blinking slowly, his lips dry, his voice weak. Is it morning already? Soo-jin moved beside him instantly, brushing the hair from his forehead. Yes, baby. You slept through the night. Do you feel okay? He nodded faintly. My chest feels better. Daniel stepped forward with a cup of warm water. Here, sip slowly. Ji-hoon took the straw and drank carefully, then looked between them with those wide, trusting eyes. Did I scare you again? He asked softly. Soo-jin's throat tightened, but she forced a gentle smile. Just a little. I don't like scaring you, Ji-hoon mumbled. I don't like being here. I know, Daniel said, kneeling beside the bed. But you're so brave. Braver than I ever was. Ji-hoon tilted his head. But you're not scared of anything. Daniel let out a slow, heavy breath. I used to be scared of everything, buddy. Of being poor. Of being not enough. Of losing people I love. Did you lose someone? The boy asked. Daniel glanced at Soo-jin, then looked back. I almost did. Ji-hoon was quiet for a moment. You mean Daniel nodded. And you? Soo-jin turned her face away, wiping a tear before it could fall. This boy, this tiny soul, was carrying so much without even realizing it. Ji-hoon's gaze moved between them. But you're here now. Both of you. That means I can get better. Right? His voice was hopeful, but fragile. Daniel's voice cracked. Yes, and even if things get hard, we'll face them together. That's what families do. There was a long pause. Then Ji-hoon asked, will I have to get the surgery? Soo-jin froze. She wasn't ready for this conversation. She didn't think he'd ask. Not so soon, not so directly. Daniel looked at her, giving her the chance to speak first. But she couldn't. Her lips moved, but nothing came out. So he gently took Ji-hoon's hand and nodded. Probably, yes. Will it hurt? There'll be medicine, and doctors who are really good at what they do. You'll be asleep the whole time. And when you wake up, we'll be right there. Ji-hoon's bottom lip trembled slightly. What if it doesn't work? Daniel swallowed. His hands tightened around the small fingers he held. Then we keep fighting. As long as you're breathing, we'll fight. And we'll never stop. Not for a second. Ji-hoon blinked, then whispered, "I want to live." Soo-jin gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The words, so soft, so honest, cut deeper than any scream could have. "You will," she said, finally finding her voice. "You will, Ji-hoon. You're going to live. You're going to run and play and grow tall and go to space school and make rockets that touch the stars. I promise." He smiled faintly. "You always say that. About the stars. Because I believe in them," she whispered. "And I believe in you." Daniel stood slowly. "I have something for you." He walked to the side of the room and pulled out a small, gift-wrapped box he had hidden in his coat. He returned to the bed, handed it to Ji-hoon. "What is it?" the boy asked, fingers already peeling at the tape. "Something I never gave you, but I should have." Ji-hoon opened it. Inside was a hand-drawn comic book. The cover said Captain Ji-hoon and the Star Whale. The drawings were rough, made with pencil and colored by hand. The pages showed a boy with black hair flying through space on the back of a giant whale, chasing comets and saving stars. "I made this last night," Daniel said. "I didn't sleep much either." Ji-hoon flipped through the pages slowly, wonder filling his face. "I love it," he said. "Can I take it to space school someday?" "You can take it anywhere," Daniel said. "It's yours." The boy's eyes sparkled. For the first time in days, he looked like a child again, not a patient, not a diagnosis, just Ji-hoon. A nurse knocked gently and stepped inside. "Dr. Han would like to see you both in his office." Soo-jin and Daniel exchanged a glance. Ji-hoon noticed. "You can go. I'll be okay." Soo-jin kissed his forehead. "We'll be back soon." They followed the nurse down the hall into the office they now knew too well. Dr. Han sat behind the desk, serious but calm. "We've reviewed the MRI again. The team met this morning. The surgery, it needs to happen sooner than we thought." Soo-jin's breath caught. "How soon?" "Within the next 10 days. His heart is weakening faster than we predicted. I'd advise transferring him to the main surgical facility tomorrow to begin pre-op assessments." Daniel leaned forward. "Is he strong enough to handle the surgery?" Dr. Han hesitated. "We believe so, but there's always risk. It's a major procedure. If you choose to move forward, I want you to understand what that means." "Are you saying we shouldn't?" Soo-jin asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm saying," the doctor said gently, "that there will never be a perfect moment, only the best possible one. And this is it." The room fell into a heavy silence. Finally, Daniel looked at her. "I'll support whatever you decide." She closed her eyes, then nodded slowly. "We fight," she whispered. "We move forward. We give him a chance." Dr. Han nodded. "I'll start the transfer arrangements." As they left the office, Soo-jin stopped in the hallway. Daniel turned to her. "You okay?" She took a breath. "No, but I don't think that matters anymore." He stepped close, touching her cheek. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." "No," she whispered. "He is." And together, they walked back toward Ji-hoon's room, hearts heavier than ever, but hands still clasped tightly, because even in fear, they had each other. Soo-jin sat beside him, her fingers laced through his. Daniel followed in the accompanying car, staring out the window in silence, his heart pounding with every mile that brought them closer to the moment they feared most. When they arrived, the surgical team greeted them with calm professionalism. Everything moved quickly, pre-op evaluations, anesthesia consultations, signature after signature. Daniel signed papers with hands that shook. Soo-jin signed with eyes that burned. By nightfall, Ji-hoon was in his private room, awaiting final clearance for surgery at dawn. Soo-jin sat by the window while Daniel sat beside Ji-hoon's bed. The monitors beeped steadily, too steadily, like a metronome ticking down to something none of them could slow. "Appa," Ji-hoon whispered. Daniel leaned in. "I'm here. Can I tell you a secret?" Daniel smiled gently. "Of course." "I'm scared." Daniel's throat tightened. He nodded. "Me too." Ji-hoon turned his head slightly. "What if I don't wake up?" Soo-jin turned sharply from the window, her body stiffening. Daniel leaned closer. You will, because you're stronger than any superhero I've ever known. You're Captain Ji-hoon, remember? But even superheroes get tired, the boy said softly. Soo-jin walked over, kneeling on the opposite side of the bed. You don't have to be brave for us, baby. Not tonight. Just rest. Let us carry the fear for you. Ji-hoon blinked up at her. Promise me something, anything. If I don't wake up, don't be sad forever. Make Appa laugh sometimes. Okay, and tell the stars about me. A sound escaped her lips, half a sob, half a breath. No, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. Don't talk like that. You will wake up, and we'll go to that space camp, and you'll build rockets, and we'll laugh together. Ji-hoon offered the smallest smile. Okay, I'll try really hard. Daniel couldn't take it anymore. He stood abruptly, walked toward the bathroom, and closed the door. Once inside, he leaned against the sink, gripping its edge, trying not to fall apart. He looked in the mirror. His reflection was pale, hollow-eyed, unfamiliar. He pressed his fists to his eyes and whispered, Please, whoever's listening, take anything from me. Just let him live. When he returned, Soo-jin was humming softly, stroking Ji-hoon's hair. The lullaby was the same one she used to sing years ago, back when their world had been nothing but a dream and a mattress on the floor. Daniel sat again, close this time, not as a visitor, not as an outsider, as a father. Do you want us to stay with you until you fall asleep? He asked. Ji-hoon nodded. Daniel glanced at Soo-jin. She nodded too. They climbed gently onto the hospital bed, one on each side, careful not to disturb the wires and tubes. Ji-hoon snuggled between them like he used to do in his early years, when the world was simpler and all he needed was the warmth of their bodies. I love you both, he whispered.